Hello, this is a bit of an introduction to the Kairos ThD and PhD programs, and is specifically addressed to faculty mentors. Now, this is the second version of a video like this. This is done in particular relevance to the version 10.0 created in the summer of 2024. So if you've seen a previous version, this will reflect some updates of that. And if you're a new faculty mentor or you're revisiting this will hopefully be able to pull the pieces together for these two programs that are to some degree flagship programs. Research doctorates tend to serve that purpose. We are one of only, I think, two institutions in the country, in the U.S., that is, that are accredited to be able to deliver both of them. So therefore, there's a distinction made between them that is important for us to pay attention to. Although it's a distinction that is nuanced and one that we are trying to enlarge a little bit, or maybe narrow the distinction. The programs are identical in terms of delivery and structure, duration, cost. There are some signs of perception that ThD is less than a PhD. They were originally sister disciplines. Over the course of the 20th century, the PhD became dominant to the point now where in theology, the dominant field is a PhD. The dominant degree is a PhD in theology, but originally that belonged to the ThD. So we are one of the schools that's helped resurrect that. One of our legacy institutions, Evangelical Seminary, created a ThD program that they had inherited a little bit from my Catholic University, the LaSalle University in Philadelphia. And so the Kairos version is actually version 3.0, and we do now see some other institutions following suit and creating their own versions of that. That was started in 2017. It was brought over to Kairos in 2022. The PhD was created in 2023. So it's a little newer, but created on the same template. So what's the difference? The ThD is reserved for disciplines that are explicitly theological. The PhD is intended for non-theological studies. Of course, that distinction is hard to maintain after a while because we're Christians. And in the end, everything is theological, and we can bring our theology to bear in a non theological topic. So we nuance that a little bit. We do want to give pay credence to our accreditors and have institutional integrity on that. So the way we're deciding and do it now is that anything that's explicitly theological, it has the word theology in the title, or it reflects one of the traditional theological disciplines. If it's biblical theology, historical theology, apologetics, something of that sort, obviously belongs in the ThD program, where a student says, I want to study this theologically, even if it doesn't have that in the name, and they would do that in the ThD program. If it's non-theological, at least in terms of their specialization, we can do that in a PhD, understanding that some research may involve theology. So one example I give of this is very personal to me. I did a PhD in American colonial history at Temple University in the early 90s. I did my research on revivalism. That was my dissertation. I did whatever research I could up to that point. So it was a theological topic done within the broader context of American colonial history. And I think I was stronger for having done it that way, not just in terms of resume, because it gave me the opportunity to teach in a variety of settings, but my understanding of revivalism was quite improved by the ability to understand it in a socioeconomic context, for instance. And my dissertation reflects that kind of context. So that might give you an idea of how we nuance these. Since we've made some changes in the summer of 2024, the distinctions between the programs are a little easier to bear in some respects. So let's talk about what the programs look like, and that will make a little bit more sense. There are three components to each of these programs: a core curriculum, again, something mandated by accreditors that looks fairly traditional, although with the revisions, we have made that look a little bit more like Kairos than it looked in the past. Then there is the student's chosen specialization, which is recorded on a transcript as fairly traditional, but can be expressed. The learning journey can look very competency based, outcome focused, like much of the rest of Kairos does. And then the third component is the dissertation, which has a default deliverable, but also can be there can be exceptions to policy made on those three things. So the core curriculum, we have a set of 4 courses that all students must take. And now, because of revisions to the program, instead of 4 different courses for the ThD than for the PhD, we have the same set of 4 courses. And they're not organized primarily by discipline, but by theme. So they can be explored primarily through a theological lens or a non-theological lens, or even some combination thereof. So, for example, one of the themes is community. And if you're a ThD student, you would want to look at community. Each of you would pick a topic within that broader theme. And you might pick a topic as a ThD student, or as a mentor, your student may pick a topic that is largely ecclesiological. And that would make sense. And we used to have an ecclesiology course in the ThD program. But if you're pursuing the PhD program and you're not primarily looking through a theological lens, you may look at cultural anthropology, you might look at sociology. If you're looking at leadership or business, you might look at organizational behavior, group dynamics. There's a whole abundance of things that can be done within a theme. And a student would pick a topic as a primary focus of that course, and hopefully be able to use it, even the core course, to feed into their specialization and perhaps even into an eventual dissertation topic. The other themes are mission, knowing, and formation. So the same things would apply. Mission could be primarily missiological, evangelism, discipleship, something theological on that end, or could be something to do with human flourishing. It could be political science. It could be some kind of advocacy. It could, whatever would mean to be a mission in the world. Formation could refer specifically to spiritual formation and discipleship and Christian education. It could refer to human development, child development, and specific or any other learning theory, anything else that would help us grow a little more further. Knowing could be applied specifically to hermeneutics or understanding of revelation, or it could be applied more generally to epistemology. So there's quite a variety of ways in which these 4 themes can be explored. And the student, under the supervision, under the direction of the guidance of the mentor team, will choose a topic and be able to respond to that. Another change that we have made in the summer 2024 is that those 4 courses are now no longer offered in a structured term-based delivery with a 3-day physical residency. That was required up until this spring, and the removal of that requirement, at least on an experimental basis by our accreditors, has allowed us to deliver these a little bit differently and something that looks more like Kairos. So they are now self-paced. A student can begin a course when they wish to begin, and they'll finish when there are 3 deliverables. There are 3 deliverables for each of them. Well, 1 deliverable, by the way, each for content, character, and craft. In the past, this is what we assess on in the PhD and ThD programs when we do a master assessment, just as we do in the other programs if you've mentored in other Kairos programs. And in the past, we didn't necessarily have a clear deliverable for the character piece in particular, and sometimes for the craft piece, because the temptation is to make this overly focused on content at the doctoral level. So now we have deliverables on all 3, which hopefully will be a help to you and the other members of your mentor team. So for each of those four courses, the content deliverable is a literature review. We teach them how to do that and give them some sources to start with, and then they expand on that, and then they eventually produce a literature review. So using some non-traditional sources as well. And that will come to you as a mentor team rather than to the faculty facilitator who's not necessarily a content expert. You're the content experts in that student specialization, which is why you are their mentor team. And so you would be able to evaluate that, and you will do the master assessment anyway. And then there is the craft piece is that we are giving them the opportunity to get to know and experiment with some research methods. We had in the past assumed that students would come in with having mastered a research method in their graduate program, and we cannot necessarily assume that, and we don't necessarily assume that the mentor teams are familiar with both humanities style research and social science research. So we're giving them a little support so they can learn research methods, and then they experiment with that. Those they will present to a group of fellow students and the faculty facilitator for the course and get feedback on that. They will eventually submit that to you as a mentor team as well. Then you can use it as a deliverable for their assessment. And then the character portion of it is some kind of reflection, and we have suggested reflections for each of those 4 courses. What have I learned as a process about myself, and how have I grown as a process of learning around this theme of community mission formation or knowing? And those, of course, will come to you as well for the master assessment. So we're not expecting that you'll be engaged significantly in the course. We just want to make sure those deliverables are necessarily coming to you. Each of those courses, as I've already hinted a little bit, does have a synchronous component. They're self-paced, but there's also a synchronous component in that there are opportunities to present to and hear presentations by other students. And those are scheduled at least once a month, several times a month, in different time zones, because we have students from around the world involved in this and mentors from around the world involved in this. And there are also weekly sessions. We calling them imagination sessions, at which various core faculty and faculty mentors will be presenting on a topic about which they're passionate. And you be invited to present as well to that. In fact, we need presenters. Don't worry so much about making the topic applicable to one of those 4 themes. Students from all 4 courses will be participating in the same imagination session. They're doctoral students. It's their responsibility to make it applicable to their theme and to the topic that they're exploring. But there will be something that hopefully, if you choose to participate, even want to pop in and see them, you're welcome to do that. But if you choose to participate or present, we're not asking for something that you would have to prepare, especially if it's something that you probably already have prepared, something you're passionate about, something that the students would be able to pick up on the passion and benefit from. And so those 2 will be offered on different days of the week, different times a day to account for different work schedules and time zones, and the recordings will be posted to Pathright. So that's the core curriculum. Spend a little more time there because that's much of that is new in this version of the program, and some of it is a little experimental, but that's typical of Kairos. So hopefully that all makes sense a little bit. Let's move on to the second portion of this, which is the student's chosen specialization. Rather than most doctoral programs where there are certain tracks, if more than one, that a student can choose from, we have not pre-chosen tracks. We would actually have to have every track pre-approved as a separate, almost a separate degree program by our accreditors. And it's been more typical of Kairos to have students propose a specialization. The difference is that in Kairos, in the research doctorates, we will not admit a student into the program if they were looking for a particular specialization if we can't support it. And by supporting it means that we have a qualified faculty mentor with expertise and capacity to take them. If we don't have that, we will deny admission, not because they're not qualified, just simply because we're not going to take their money and not support them well. Now, so that's why you're here. You're obviously one of those that has expertise and capacity and is working with a student or thinking about it. That does not mean, of course, that we're expecting that the faculty mentor has to deliver all those goods themselves. There's a whole mentor team, and particularly in the research doctors, the other 2 mentors matter quite a bit. We use the phrase in Kairos, we talk about the 3-person mentor team as a faculty mentor, a vocational mentor, and a personal mentor. And those words vocational and personal can apply to these other 2 mentors in our research doctorates. But what we're really looking for here is expertise. We think of the way I encourage students to think of it is this is a dissertation team that you're forming at the beginning of your program, and they will walk with you the whole way through. The other 2 mentors need not be necessarily doctorally qualified. It might be helpful if they've done the journey before, but what we're really looking for is expertise. And we all know people who have tremendous expertise and don't yet have a diploma on the wall. But those people have an awful lot to bring too. In fact, I discourage the students from getting too definitive on picking their other two until they've had a chance to talk to you and get to know you and see who they can build around you. So one of my favorite examples of this is a student that I'm mentoring. It's leadership theology. He's a senior leader in a Catholic healthcare institution. He actually asked me to be his faculty mentor because I work with students in the admissions process. And I said, I can help you with the leadership theology piece. That's one of my fields, but I'm not a Catholic. I don't know Catholic theology. I would run out after about 52 minutes, which is a bit of an exaggeration, but we'd be better served by somebody that knows your context, that matters to you. And I said, I don't know the healthcare industries. I don't know that context either. And he said, do not worry, I will cover those. And so he recruited a Catholic theologian and a retired executive in a healthcare institution. And between the three of us, we're supporting him very well. That burden is not all on me. And I would encourage you to utilize the other two mentors, help the students choose them well, and build a good team that can support. Even again, you're not primarily here because you are super content experts and know everything. You're here to facilitate a process. And we want to teach our students to be hunter-gatherers, to be self-motivated learners, to go out and find what it is that they need to learn. We may sometimes point them in the right direction. We may assess what they're bringing back to us. We will assess what they're bringing back to us, but we don't have to have read every book we would recommend. We don't have to have know everything, all the literature. We're helping them find what it is that they would need to do. You can work with the student one or three on one, or if there happen to be several students who are treading the same ground at roughly the same time, feel free to pull them together into a mini cohort. We can't mandate that of them, but you're allowed to invite that of them. And I have done that whenever possible, and I find that to be a very rich experience because they learn from each other and from each other's context, because we see from where we stand. And if you get students from different contexts who are seeing the same, perhaps the same book, the same question, but are interpreting it in very different ways because of the different context, that gets very rich. And of course, they support one another in the journey, which is very helpful. In that case, so well, I will meet occasionally just with one student and their individual mentor team. Most of my conversations with them, typically a monthly rhythm, are with three or four students at a time with the other members of the mentor team who are able to be there. Master assessments, of course, we'll do individually, but provides for a bit of a group environment, and there's a lot of richness there. So I'd recommend that to you if that would interest you and you would be fortunate enough to have several students traveling at the same time. How do you structure this? Well, what's going to show up in the transcript for the specialization are 6 courses, 3 credits each: literature, history, concepts, models, practices, and methods of their discipline. These are 6 things that we're going to need to be able to be proficient in them, regardless of the discipline, field of inquiry, professional field, whatever, however you want to define a specialization. In Kairos terms, we identify those 6 things as 3 outcomes, just dyads: literature and history of the discipline, concepts and models of the discipline, and the literature and the practices and methods. By the way, practices, we refer to professional practices. Methods refers to research methods. Literature and history is, let's enter a we're entering a conversation that's been going on for a long time. Some students who have a lot of experience in this field or multiple degrees or already have a doctorate, about 25% of them do, might be able to breeze through that first outcome fairly quickly because they can demonstrate how prior learning has given them proficiency already. Concepts and models is, how does this discipline interpret reality, and what are the competing models that help us do that? So those what we're learning toward. How those are defined, they're really between you and the mentor team. You're the experts in the discipline. There's nobody looking over your shoulder saying you're not doing this right. But we do want to make sure that it's doctoral level proficiency at a research level, that they do know their field and are expert in their field, that they're engaging or capable of engaging on a peer level with scholars and practitioners in their fields. So you get to define what that looks like and assess accordingly. So that can be a very structured kind of approach. There are some mentors who do this in a way that looks like courses. And that makes it easy for translating into the coursework that shows up on the transcript. And if that's what you prefer to do and the student is hanging with you and it's a little bit more structured, yeah, some do something that looks very unstructured and it's an individualized path, and it looks very much like you would be mentoring in the MA or MDiv program or elsewhere in Kairos. And if you're an experienced Kairos mentor, that would make sense to you. So you just go to the outcomes. Some do a combination, some middle ground. That's what I tend to do. I tend to work out, negotiate kind of a reading list with my students. We pursue a theme for a while. I have them read a book a week. We gather once a month. We dialogue about the readings. We pursue that theme, and then I'll ask them to write me a paper, and that integrates and applies their reading that they've been doing on that theme as well as other sources. It's not necessarily a research paper, but it it's kind of a literature review of what they've been reading and bringing other things in. But I want them to apply it to their context. If that paper later shows up as part of chapter 2 of the dissertation, so much the better. But I want them to do that for each of the themes. So we do that for several months. It'll feel kind of course-like. And if somebody is getting VA benefits or something and needs to have a course show up on their transcript right away, we can do that. You can assess them on outcomes one at a time as you go through, or even on courses one at a time as you go through. I find it difficult in my field to separate the outcomes from each other, because when we start doing the literature and history, we start reading the literature, the concepts and models appear. And as we're talking about the models, we start talking about practice. And in order to understand practice, we have to evaluate research methods. And to me, they kind of all get mixed up together. Your discipline may be different, or your way of doing things may be far more organized than my more messy way. I tend to assess toward multiple outcomes at the same time. As a result, I'm not necessarily recommending that, but I'm just saying that's an option as well. You have considerable flexibility working with the other mentors and the students in order to be able to express the specialization. And we're trying to do that not to add confusing ambiguity, but to give you maximum flexibility. Here is this student with this context, with this discipline. What's the best way for them to learn and get their proficiency? What do you best bring? What do they most need? And you have some quite fair amount of flexibility in order to be able to get there. I should have mentioned, by the way, back with the core curriculum, they're taking those 4 courses. Those courses are intended to be a primary way to demonstrate proficiency in 2 related program outcomes there as well. We just call them micro integration and macro integration. But again, we're learning toward outcomes. So the students will just passing a course doesn't necessarily mean that they demonstrated proficiency in those outcomes if they just did the minimum amount to get through. We want to use the course as a vehicle to a greater end. The course is a means toward that end. It is not the end of itself. So there's 2 outcomes there. There are 3 outcomes related to the specialization, and then there's an additional outcome related to the dissertation phase. First, before they enter dissertation, they have a comprehensive exam. And if you have done a research degree yourself, you know that sometimes these things are brutal. We try not to be brutal. We go back to the original intention of a comprehensive exam, which was simply to ascertain readiness for the dissertation phase. One reason it be turned into kind of a formal exam is because there wasn't necessarily faculty members who've been tracking with a student the whole way through what is in North America sometimes a very elaborate course curriculum. And therefore, there had to be some kind of examination process to see what the student knew and whether they were capable of moving forward. Here we have mentor teams that have been tracking with the student through everything, leading, guiding the student through much of it. And so we have decided that a comprehensive assessment will consist of an intentional conversation between the mentor team and the student. And we do mean intentional, not just move them along down the path. We don't want to set any student up to fail, particularly at this stage after they've invested a couple of years. And typically it is a 2-year journey through the core courses and through the specialization. They can do more than 1 core course at a time, by the way. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless they're retired or not employed actively. But typically, it's been about a 2-year process. And to move into the dissertation, we'll make sure they're ready. This is where perhaps you would ask the question, is another language necessary for them to do what they want to do for their dissertation? We don't have an across-the-board language requirement. But for instance, some of those who are doing biblical theology, well, they may need to make sure they know the original languages to do what they need to do. And if they haven't come in with that and they haven't picked it up along the way, this would be a good time to stop, make sure that's taken care of. If you're doing research in the 19th century German theologians or something, and you might be good to be able to read them in the original German, or if there's something you're doing historically that's not well translated. You as a mentor team can decide that. Is there something that is needed? Is there a research approach that the student hasn't mastered that would be the appropriate approach to use for a dissertation? Is there a gap in their knowledge that even though they've done well with their specialization in their core courses, is there something that is missing that we need to take care of? And the comprehensive assessment is the time to talk about that, to act on it. Maybe come back then 6 months later and do it again, and then say, okay, you're ready now. And then you move into the dissertation phase. The default deliverable for our dissertation is a standard academic formal dissertation. That's very appropriate for those who perhaps are pursuing academic careers and such. And if a student wants to do that, that's what ATS would prefer that we keep as a default. I will confess that I am not a big fan of the standard academic dissertation. You can be, and you can disagree with me on that, but most of them are not read, and they don't make a difference in the world. And we do want these programs to make a difference. The goal of the ThD program is to improve ministry practice in the church. We define ministry broadly and church broadly, but it's to be a gift to the church to do things better than we've done them in the past. And Lord knows we need to. The goal of the PhD program is to improve human flourishing in some way. And that's a Christian motive as well. And so we want the work that they do to make a difference in the world, and not just be an academic checklist item, not just to be a big project that they'll never repeat, because most people don't. They could sit on a shelf somewhere, and 3 members of the committee and the student's mother or somebody's the only people that ever read these things. So what we invite students to do is consider asking for an exception to policy. It has to be requested, and you as a mentor team have to grant it. But that would be to produce another deliverable. We would want to see the same level of scholarship, same academic rigor, but perhaps addressed to a wider audience. Most of my own students do straight to book projects. I have one that's going to be doing a series of interviews for his research, and he's going to turn them into podcasts with commentary attached. That's going to be his deliverable, and we'll have to work that out, because we're going to want to see the scholarship and some quality content there, not just talking heads. But we're open to that deliverable. So there are other ways, and there are other ways that we can be more creative. We are less concerned about the form of the deliverable and more concerned about the outcome being achieved. That the student is generating knowledge or creating knowledge. We use different language for different program, but they're interchangeable. And they're producing something that will be a benefit to others, and not just the academic community, if possible. So we want to make you aware of that, and you can engage the student on what will be appropriate for that. But yes, we are looking for something that will be substantive and will be somewhat longitudinal, and will involve quite considerable amount of impact and involvement from you. There are occasional teams where we need to swap out a mentor when we get to the dissertation phase. If there's somebody that's really doesn't have the expertise, or somebody new with expertise needs to be added to the team in order to support the student's dissertation. We have dissertation handbooks for both the ThD and the PhD. They're largely identical. We just use different program language, and we have a process. It begins with a topic approval form that they will work with you. There's a 5-page concept paper that gets them started in this process, and there's suggestions in there for engaging the process. Students can use whatever research approach would be appropriate, and you help them decide that what's appropriate for their discipline, for their topic. Theology students tend to lean into more humanities style research, which in one sense, it's kind of an extended literature review with them engaging the sources in pursuit of a thesis. PhD students tend to pursue more of a social science approach, which tends to be a more structured 5-chapter engagement with human subjects kind of approach. We do, by the way, have an institutional review process for the ethical treatment of human subjects. And we would ask all students whose research does involve human subjects to read that and to sign off on it. One of the things in their proposal that they would give to you is a place where they would indicate what kind of research they're doing, and you as a team would have to prove that. And then we have some people in support if the ethical considerations require some kind of deeper or wider review than what you are able to do there. So you can read that document as well. But all of this is posted. So those are the three pieces, by the way, and I'll get to where they're posted. The core curriculum, 4 self-paced courses that have some synchronous components that all students do that are around themes. The specialization that the student chooses and that you at the mentor team are the resident experts on, to the degree that you need to be experts, and you guide them through in a pathway that is appropriate for you and for the student and the discipline. And then the dissertation and whatever deliverable that takes the place of. Everything I've said here is expressed in writing in a path, a program path that is available on Pathwright. There's a PhD program path where it's laid out kind of step by step. You don't have to do this step by step. The core curriculum doesn't have to precede the specialization. Most students do it at the same time. There's a ThD program path, the same thing. So it guides you through step by step, detailed descriptions of outcomes, master assessments, and the forms are identified there. There are 4 courses. The 4 core courses are available on Pathwright on separate program paths, and you would want to be a teacher or a moderator on that, so your student can do some reflections directly to you and to receive those deliverables. There's a separate path which has some research supplemental materials. So all of this is on Pathwright. And the other thing that we offer you is a mentor liaison to support you as you work with these research doctorates. And that is me, and that is the reason that I'm talking to you. I play kind of a lead role in the ThD and PhD programs, and I serve as the faculty facilitator for the core courses. So I'm glad to assist you along the way. We have occasional meetings of the mentors, so we can talk with one another about some of the things that we're dealing with. And as in everything's Kairos, we continue to assess and we continue to make improvements, and would love to hear your voice on that and how we can best make this work for you. But hopefully this overview has not been too long, but hopefully helpful. I know I've been talking fast. You can slow it down and review a little bit, but hopefully it's been helpful in understanding how the pieces fit together, and particularly what your role as a faculty mentor is in making this work. In the end, I'm praying that the Lord is going to give us the opportunity to train literally hundreds, if not thousands, of scholar practitioners who are going to make a difference in the world. And the reason we're trusting them with you is because we already see that in your profile, a scholar practitioner, maybe a practitioner scholar, it doesn't matter, who is making a difference in the world. And hopefully your wisdom, the way I word this is that the role is not necessarily labor intensive. I don't spend hours and hours a month on this, not at the doctoral level. I teach the students how to do that, but it is wisdom intensive. And hopefully you can bring who you are to this, not just what you know, who you are to this journey. And the students will benefit from what you have become and who you have become through your own growing and learning and discipleship process. Hopefully that's helpful. Please let me know how I can help you even more. Thank you very much.